For the final seam that I'm going to teach you in this skill group, I'm going to show you a flat fell. This is a true flat fell. It is an enclosed seam, which means that I will start with my fabric, which these are 4 inches by 8 inches. And I will be starting wrong sides together because it is a true enclosed seam. We do have flat fell machines in the industry, but this is how we would do this kind of seam at home. There are multiple ways to do this seam. I'm going to show you a method which means that you don't have to change your seam allowances to do it. There will be people who have issues with this method. The other method requires you to be really good at spacing out your fabric. So spacing it out so that the edges don't line up. And your pattern pieces wouldn't have the same seam allowance when you start. However, for this, just to make it easy and understand the concept, we're going to start with our edges right together. And to make sure that I have a nice big flat fell, I'm actually going to sew my seam line at 3/4 of an inch. You could do it at 1/2 an inch and that would be perfectly fine. It just means that you would have a smaller flat fell seam that's visible. So obviously this seam is flexible as to what size you use, but I will start with 3/4 of an inch. You do back stitch at the beginning. And you back stitch at the end. The next thing that I'm going to do, so this is the surface of the fabric that I'm looking at. This is the right side because we began wrong sides together. So on the right side of the fabric, I now have my seam sticking up here into the middle of nowhere. Before I go and press, I'm going to decide which side I want to be the face that I see. So if I want this all to come over to this side, this underside, I'm going to trim and get rid of some of it. So to do that, I'm just going to take some clippers and I'm going to trim this down to about 1/4 of an inch. Make sure you don't accidentally clip both layers. So I'm going to trim the excess off so that I have one side that's really tall and one side that's really short. If I was doing the other method, I would have started with that piece, just everything shifted over. So I didn't have to trim fabric, but that would require a lot more pattern making skill for you to figure out which side you want to be what. And for all intents and purposes, this will work just fine. So now I'm going to go and press. So to press the flat fell, we begin by pressing the seam completely open. And again, the reason we press things open first is to help embed the stitches and to make it so that we don't create any seam wells. Then we're going to take the long side, and we're going to press it down the other direction, over the top of the 1/4 inch. And then finally what we're going to do is we're going to take this longer side and we're going to fold it in half. We can wrap the 1/4 inch inside of it if we want. We can just put this on top. It really ultimately doesn't matter. People really won't see it. People won't really know what's going on. So I'm going to take this, I'm just folding it so that it's all nice tucked away and a nice clean finish. Make sure that it's equidistant all the way along. And I'm just going to go ahead, press that flat, give it some steam, and then I'm going to go back and finish sewing it. To finish out the true flat fell seam, so remember, I'm looking at the surface of the fabric right now. I have pressed all of this. So now what I'm going to do is sew 1/16 of an inch away from this edge. And that's going to hold everything inside remember to backstitch. At the beginning, at the end. That is a flat fell seam. It's completely done. So here is a true flat fell. It has 2 stitches on the front with just that seam line. You can just see right there, that edge. On the back, we can see the seam line as well as along with 1 row of stitching. So that is a true flat fell. This is the face, this is the back. If you want, so here's a true flat fell. If you like the look of the back better, then just reverse the steps. So instead of starting wrong sides together, start right sides together, and you can do all of the stuff that you did here on the wrong side of the fabric, and this can be the exterior of the fabric. So this is kind of a reversible stitch. On one side you have a true flat fell, on the back you have a reverse flat fell. In any case, you could use either and it will enclose the seams.